Hello everyone. So I was messing around with colors this morning and I came up with three mixes that I wanted to share. I've been seeing online a lot of people swatching Daniel Smith's transparent red iron oxide, and I love that color. Very much kind of my style in watercolor. And I'm so tempted to purchase it. And I'm like, you don't need it. There's no space in your palette. You know, you can mix it. I'm pretty sure I have the pigments and I know how to mix that. So I'm like, okay, well, let me go see if I can mix the hue for transparent red iron oxide. And also, Daniel Smith has a transparent yellow iron oxide, which I also very much like as well. It's like in between a Mars yellow and a because I have those. In between like a Mars yellow, which is down here in this corner, and a yellow ochre, which is right here, and I love both of those colors. The yellow ochre is a little weak, and the granulation sometimes isn't as much as I want. The Mars yellow is more smooth, less granular, stronger color, warmer, more saturated. And I want something that's even more bold, even more transparent, even more granulation. So essentially that would be what I would consider a transparent yellow iron oxide hue. So I figured out some mixes today that work very well to create a red iron oxide hue and a yellow iron oxide hue. So I'm going to be showing how to mix those colors today in this video. So the first thing I have to do is turn off my air filter because it just came on and it's making noise and I don't want to have that bother you guys, so give me one moment. All right. Okay, so let's begin with the red iron oxide recipe. Well, actually, let's start with the yellow. I think it was the easiest to mix. So the yellow requires 3 pigments. The red, I think, takes 5. And then I even came up with a blue iron oxide hue, which doesn't even exist. That's not a paint. However, we can create something like it, right? Because if we have a yellow iron oxide and a red iron oxide, I'm like, well, where's the blue iron oxide? So I created a mix. So I'm going to show off the triad of what all 3 of those colors might look like together. So let's start with the transparent yellow iron oxide, which I think is 3 pigments. The red, I think, is 5. And the blue, I think, is also 5. So let's start with the yellow. So we're going to use Hansa Yellow Light. Mine is by Core, which I have right here. I'm going to just get a nice good dab of that. Load up the brush. I'm going to put that into the well. Clean well that I made for mixing this color here. Okay. And then I'm going to use Core Transparent Brown Iron Oxide to give it warmth, because that Core Transparent Brown Iron Oxide color is right here swatched. It's essentially an earthy orange, so it's really not brown, I don't think, and so this is very useful for warming up reds and such, and so for yellow it'll do the same purpose. So we're going to pull that slightly warmer. I have to rinse out this brush because this was a little contaminated, the Hansa Yellow here, so I want to get just more of the Hansa Yellow, the cool undertone first, and mix that back up so it starts cooler. The paint that was on top of it was already the Core Transparent Brown Iron Oxide. However, I want to show you from the coolness of the Hansa Yellow itself how we warm it up, right, without having some of it already in the Hansa Yellow. So we'll just start adding now the Transparent Brown Iron Oxide by Core. You just add a little bit for the warmth. I think that's plenty. It may be too much, no big deal. We can always add more yellow later if we want. And so now we're going to add in Daniel Smith Enviro-Friendly Transparent Brown Iron Oxide. So that's the last color, and this is the main one that gives it the hue and the granulation that we're looking for. So we're going to add that in. And essentially the color that we mix here should look like a slightly more saturated yellow ochre once we begin blending all the colors together. So I know I'm going to need some more Hansa Yellow, so I'm going to just go pick that up right now, and I'm going to start swirling it in here. And already I think that's pretty close. That may be just a little bit too much of the earth tones for what I want, so I'm going to add just a little bit more water, and I'm going to take just a little bit more of the Hansa Yellow Light. Just a little bit. A little bit more than that. And I think that's going to be pretty close to what we're looking for. And so I'm going to make a small swatch of it here. Gonna try to, I always like to, when I do swatches, to show from like a deep mass tone down to like water it down. so that you can really see the tonal qualities of it, right? So like how much tonal variation does that color potentially have? So I'm gonna just water that down some more until we're pretty faint and diluted. And then I normally like to go over it while it's still wet-ish with another layer to just kind of take the color a little further and darken up the mass tone and make sure the blend is a little smoother as it gradiates. So I'm going to pick up some more of this color again, and I'm going to swatch out more. And of course, when it's wet is when the granulation effect is going to be most visible. So it's important, you know, if you want to really experience the granulation, that you do this with a little bit of wet on wet. So as I'm adding the pigment in, once it's begun to become damp again, that's when you're going to see the color granulate as I want it to, and as this color can. Okay, and add just a little bit more water. I'm going to pick up just a little bit, last bit of this paint here I mixed, and I'm going to just go over the top of it one more time. Pull the water down and mix it in. Put just a little bit of water. Start from the bottom, I'm going to go up. Okay, I think that should do it. Now let's mix the red iron oxide hue that I came up with. So we're going to use burnt sienna for that. So I'm going to grab some burnt sienna, which is already pigment brown 7, which I believe is some kind of iron oxide. So already it is an iron oxide essentially. And this is a reddish orange, mostly red, but slight orange warmth to it with the yellow undertone. So that's useful to get a base going for it. So we'll put down some Daniel Smith burnt sienna. And then we're going to need Daniel Smith environmentally friendly brown iron oxide as the next color. So that's here. I'm going to pick that up on my brush. I'm going to put some in. And I think we want a little bit more of the brown iron oxide to the burnt sienna as far as tinting strength is concerned. So like, let's say 35% burnt sienna, 45% brown iron oxide. And I'm talking about tinting strength here. And when I say 35%, I really mean like how much you consider the tinting strength when you first put it down, anticipating that more paint is going to go on top of it. And so we're going to go over 100%. So if that makes sense, it probably doesn't. It's just how it makes sense to my brain. Okay, so after we add in that, I'm going to add just a little bit more of the transparent Daniel Smith transparent brown iron oxide. And now we're going to use Core's transparent brown iron oxide, which is orangier, and the granulation is finer than either the burnt sienna or the transparent from Daniel Smith. So we're going to add this a little bit for some warm undertones, because we do not want to lose it, because we're going to use quinacridone red as the transparent red, which is cool. So this is the transparent orange, which is going to pull the hue back away from the pinkishness of the quinacridone red. So this is an important color. So add in quite a lot of this color from Core, the transparent brown iron oxide, which is orangish. Already, I think if you wanted to swatch that, you might get a decent enough color if that's what you're looking for. So actually, let's just do that on a separate page here. This isn't watercolor paper, so the swatches don't come out exactly the same, but here is what we've got so far for that color, and really that's quite gorgeous. This is really more brown, and I'm looking to have more red, so that's why it's not finished yet. You know, I want it to be a red iron oxide. I don't want it to be an orangish, reddish, brown iron oxide. No, I want it to be a red iron oxide. Okay, so after we add in the Core, we want to add in the Core quinacridone red. Well, I guess there's only 4 pigments. I thought it was 5. Okay, yeah, so this is the last pigment. So now we just add in the Core quinacridone red, and we'll be done. So Core quinacridone red, mix it in, mix it in, mix it in, mix it in, mix it in. I think that may have been a little bit too much. Let's just test it on the side to see. That's close-ish, but what I want to do is add the earth element a little bit more. So the hue is about right. I like the warmth of it. So I'm going to add just a titch more of the core the core transparent brown iron oxide. And mostly what I need to add here is the Daniel Smith environmentally friendly transparent brown iron oxide. And just to achieve the balance between the red and the orangishness, we're going to add just a titch more burnt sienna as well before we add the final touch to it with the Daniel Smith transparent brown iron oxide. Burnt sienna, and now finally the transparent brown iron oxide. We're going to mix that up and get more of like an earthy rust color, which is still fairly saturated. So that's, I think, what we're looking for. Yeah, okay, so I'm going to swatch that on the paper because I think, well, let's try it first here just a little bit. How does that look? Yeah, that's still looking too brown. So we got to add some more quinacridone red back. Just a little bit this time. How's that? Not quite enough. Let's add some more core transparent brown iron oxide and a little bit more quinacridone red. How's that? A little bit more quinacridone red. How's that? Yeah, that's better. Maybe just a little bit more transparent. Yep, that'll look good in there. Okay, I think that's it. So now we're going to swatch this. If anything, I can add just a little bit more core quinacridone red, so I'm going to. Let's start back over at the top. And let's go over it from the top. I like my specialty colors that I create in mixes to be able to go from a strong dark mass tone down through good midtones down to a very light wash. I don't like wishy-washy paints, and I like a full tonal range, so that's something I always go for in my mixes. And these colors are pretty good for that for the most part. Okay, so one mix that I'm not able to show today because it's really quite a bit too complex for me to mix. I don't have the energy or the time today, and I've already mixed it here in the center well. And this is a version of what I might imagine would be a blue transparent iron oxide. So we have some kind of yellow transparent iron oxide, some kind of red transparent iron oxide. I figured, well, we need a blue to complete the primary colors. So I created a mix for that for the blue. I'm going to read the pigments involved. So I think this is 5 pigments. So this is 3 pigments, this is 4 pigments. I think this is 5 pigments, the blue will be. So Ultramarine Blue by Daniel Smith, Phthalo Blue Green Shade by Daniel Smith, Carbazole Violet by Daniel Smith, Burnt Sienna by Daniel Smith, and Environmentally Friendly Transparent Brown Iron Oxide by Daniel Smith. So, and the ratios are approximately 75 to 100 of Ultramarine Blue, 20 to 25 of 100 of Phthalo Blue Green Shade, 15 to 20 out of 100 of Carbazole Violet, 45 of 100 of Burnt Sienna, 35 of 100 of Daniel Smith Environmentally Friendly Transparent Brown Iron Oxide. The key here is that burnt sienna and transparent brown iron oxide mixed in with the phthalo blue and ultramarine somehow want to create a teal green undertone. And so that was very tricky to balance out because I'm looking for basically like a primary blue hue, but earthy with iron oxide look. And so the Carbazole Violet pulls it back from the green undertone, you know, back to the realm of the ultramarine and phthalo blue green shade blueness. And it's very difficult to get that ratio balanced correctly. So I'll be experimenting with that some more later, and eventually, if you guys like this color, I might make a video of it. And even if you don't say anything, I'll probably upload it at some point anyway, potentially. So I'm going to swatch out the blue mix I just described that I've already pre-mixed here after quite a lot of testing. So here is our blue transparent iron oxide hue. And this is an imaginative color because this doesn't exist. As a pigment, it doesn't exist, but as a mix, it might. So here we go. And so that's kind of what I had in my mind of like, what would a transparent blue iron oxide look like? So, and to complement like a primary triad of these colors. So I'm going to go over it once more like I did with the other swatches with color one more time. Darken it up. Smooth out the gradient as best I can. Yep. So I'm going to pull up my camera and show you up close now these colors. So let me just keep it in vertical. So here are my hue mixes to create a transparent yellow iron oxide, a transparent red iron oxide, and a transparent blue iron oxide hue. That this one doesn't exist. These two do as pigments, and so these are not actually the pigments, but these are hues to mix them. And then I imagined what a blue of a brown of an iron oxide might look like. So there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.